This session is altered books, when one artist's book, finished book becomes the raw materials for another. I do start this session with a half joking but half sincere content warning. Okay, I'm just going to show off all the fun stuff. So this presentation contains graphic images that may be disturbing to some viewers. Participation in activities during this presentation is completely voluntary. This one, now this is actually a serious warning because it's interesting when people have never seen a book being destroyed in front of them, how viscerally they respond in some cases. Like they're like, people have panic attacks. I've seen it, it's fascinating. So linking this back to my presentation to yesterday about books as object, as sculpture, as performance, the whole idea of this is that it builds on 5,000 years of history of books being symbolic of knowledge, of information, of something important in the world. So it's why anytime there's a book burning scene in a movie, Indiana Jones, which one is that one? The third Indiana Jones, where it's the scene with the Nazis burning books in a giant pile. Those things impact people because of all the meaning we put into books. So what is an altered book? So based on that, that background, an altered book, oh, hang on, here we go. An altered book is a subset of what are called artist books. So artist books or book arts are works of art that utilize the form of the book. So they could be just things made with pages, and they could be blank, they could be like with fancy papers, but they clearly are making a book or playing off the book form. What's different about an altered book is an altered book doesn't make a brand new piece of art. It actually takes an existing book and messes with it to turn it into something else. So this goes back to a thing I talked about in my presentation yesterday about books as sculpture. That for me, I love every time I have to sign up for When Words Collide and it says, are you a reader or are you a writer or are you something else? And I'm like, I'm always checking off something else. Especially in the last few years, it's gotten to the point where it's like, I'm not even a reader anymore. I mean, I write commercially. I don't consider myself a writer the way When Words Collide writers call themselves writers. I don't like, I work with words for a living, but I don't consider myself a writer in that way. And I really don't read as much as most of the people who come here who are voracious readers. I've become a book collector. I am fascinated by the book as an object. So one of the things I always talk about books as sculpture is, I used to hate this phrase where people would come to my house and they go, oh, I love how you've used books in your decor. It's like, that's not my decor. Those are my books. It's not to make the house look nice. It's because I have books. But as I've sort of evolved in this playing around with books as object, you end up with things like this. So this is the last bookstore in Los Angeles. My sister moved down to LA a bunch of years ago. She discovered this and she said, as soon as you come visit me, I'm taking you to the store. And so I didn't have a chance to ask the store what the source material was for this, but they are a used and new bookstore. I assume that these are just books they couldn't sell or books that were damaged or books that were no longer readable. And they turned it into this gorgeous swooping piece of artwork. This on the left is me standing by their book walls and book tunnels. In the back, you'll see another arch of books. That is like a 12-foot long tunnel made of books that you can walk through. Again, all of these books presumably are no longer readable. And then the other one I want to share is a piece of artwork at that store as well, where they've clearly cut apart a book and it's a stream of pages flying off of a typewriter. So they've taken the book as an object and turned it into something even more. And so the next picture is the one that set off the side discussion about how the heck did you even do that, which created the blog post yesterday about how you hang books on the wall. So this is my feature wall in my living room. And again, it's me playing on the idea of books not as books to read or books to shelve, but books to display as artwork. The same way I've got a painting in the background there. I've got my books mounted because they are art to me, as much as things to be read. So now, okay, so now brace yourselves. The next section is a bit of a slideshow of books that, some of my favorite books from the Bruce Peale Special Collections at the University of Alberta. So the Bruce Peale Special Collections is what they call a closed stack library, which means you can't sign books out. You can submit a request to see something based on their catalog. They will bring it out to you. You turn in ID, you wash your hands. They supervise you. In fact, you have to sit at the reading table with the object, the book, between you and the librarian on duty so that they can always watch you. And it's as much because there are things like thefts of maps out of rare books and things like that. And so one of the amazing things they have there is a collection of altered books and book arts. So the first one I'm about to show you, hang on, I'm just gonna go video only because I want to see what it is. Okay, so this thing, this object is called the metaphorical Kindle. And so the Kindle, or the Kobo for us in Canada, is a book that has lots of other little books in it. And oh, I can't show you because it's over here. So I've got my iPad, which I use as an e-reader. I have a book, I have a case for it that looks like a leather-bound book. Because for me, I just can't read without holding a thing. So when I saw this piece of artwork, I thought it was just amazing. So this is the metaphorical Kindle. This artist, Rachel Walsh, took a book, cut these holes in it, took the pages that she'd cut out, made them into miniature books with these covers. And now I'm trying to remember, I think, oh yes, right, Explaining the Kindle to Charles Dickens. So I believe this is a copy of a Charles Dickens book that she's cut apart. And each of the miniature books is a book that would have been in Charles Dickens's personal library. So if you, I don't know if you can see on the screen, but The Vicar of Wakefield, Tales of Don Quixote, A Streetcar Named Desire is not, is that Tennessee? Is that Charles Dickens same time? I don't think so. Okay, so maybe not. But basically this is to try and explain to someone from the, you know, the early 1900s or whatever Charles Dickens was around, to explain to him what a Kindle is. It's a bunch of books inside another book. And so let me see. So, oh, there we go. Some close-ups. I'll zoom in on this for all of you. So the 60-minute Shakespeare, Macbeth is in there. And so I just fell in love with this thing because it's absolutely playing with the idea of, well, what a book actually is. Okay, hang on here. Okay, this next one, oh yeah, okay. I just love these things. So this next one is called The Story of Philosophy, and by Barry Spector, 1982. And so it's a German philosophy book about the story of philosophy. And I'm hoping you can't really tell, but the book, with the book open, it looks like, okay, there's a book, there's a page. What's going on here? I'll zoom in and see if it becomes a little clearer. But what the book artist has done is they've shaved off or torn apart every individual page at a different point so that what you get is the story of philosophy is just a gray mass of half bits of type as a social commentary on philosophy or something. And I mean, like a lot of sculpture, it's like the meaning is whatever you want to pull out of it. But so much of the meaning that you might pull out of it derives from the fact that this was originally a book that you could read, and they've rendered it illegible, which I don't know, for a lot of people, that's what philosophy is. It's an illegible gray mass of things. And so that's, again, a step in that same direction. Now, oh, okay, so the next one is one of my favorites. So every year for convocation at the University of Alberta, the University Senate donates a book to the Bruce Peale Special Collections in honor of each of the honorary degree recipients. And basically it's a budget that the Senate gives to Bruce Peale, and Bruce Peale goes, oh, okay, who's getting an honorary degree this year? Let's pick something thematic, something we were wanting to buy. So Wayne Gretzky got an honorary degree from us. And so the book that was chosen for it is called Puck's Arena, a Power Play. It is a complete works of Shakespeare into which has been carved an ice arena, so that when you pull it out of the slipcase, you see the steps. And the idea apparently is that the sort of the bits of word on the side is like all the crowd cheering and watching the game. And if you look up close, down at the very bottom, there are little plastic transfer sheets with hockey plays, just like your coach would put on the thing. And so when I saw this thing, I mean, I was horrified because I think I was taking a grad level Shakespeare class at the same time. But I thought this was just remarkable. Oh, okay, that's the only picture I've got of it. So again, if right now the Bruce Peale is unfortunately closed down because of the pandemic, but in the before times and hopefully in the after times, you can actually just look up Puck's Arena in the university library catalog, submit a form to request it, and go into the library and just flip the pages on this thing. As much as I've tried to take photos to sort of capture the impact of it, man, looking at them for real is, I mean, it's what we were figuring out about virtual conferences versus in-person conferences. We can get a bit of the idea of it, but it's not quite the same as being there. Okay, now brace yourselves. This next one, it's called The Submerged Book, Jana Kluge, 1984. This is one of the ones, this is where we started getting into like really disturbing areas, because the last two books, you could at least sort of flip through and still turn the pages, see some of the words left. I mean, you can't really read it, but there's at least some interactivity allowed with the book. This next one, I don't know what possessed her. She decided to just sink a book in the ocean or an aquarium or something and let things grow on it. So this is Submerged Book. And this is purely into the sculpture world, where it is not a book that you can turn the pages, you can't interact with it. It is just this thing. The Lego brick is for scale. I always do that in my photos. But so if, oh, hang on, sorry, I'm gonna, here we go. So the detail on these, it's fascinating because you can still see the pages. And again, like a sculpture, I don't know what kind of things this might evoke for you in terms of, you know, the sense, the feeling of it being mysterious or being like part of a shipwreck, or what do the words actually say? I can't remember. Oh yeah, top right picture, it's a Spanish-English dictionary or Spanish something, Spanish-German dictionary. So for me, I wouldn't even be able to read it even if I could see the pages of it. Now, do I have, oh yeah, okay, here's the super close-up of it. And again, if someone had just sunk a piece of stone or a sculpture underwater and had the same sort of effect of things growing on it and drying on it, it doesn't have the same power as when you've taken a book and done this to it. And so again, that 5,000 history of books being repositories of knowledge, it's that symbolic capital being blocked from you, being corrupted, being whatever this is that we want to describe this piece as, that becomes what is so powerful about this work. Oh, okay, right. Sorry, the way I'm doing this, I don't actually get to see ahead what my slides are, so I have to keep reminding myself what the slides are coming next. So the next piece is actually, I think, something that Nicolette would like a lot more. So there's one of the things that I'll talk about a little more later is something called blackout poetry. And so blackout poetry, for those of you who may not be familiar with the idea, is you tear a page at random out of a book, and you take a Sharpie marker and you block off words to leave behind the words you want to write a poem. And I found it fascinating because I think it's Michelangelo who described sculpting as revealing the sculpture that's already in the marble. And that's sort of to me, that's sort of philosophically the same as blackout poetry, where you get this, for you, a random block of words, and you need to figure out, oh, in there, buried in there, I just need to scrape away the parts that don't belong around this poem. So this next work is called The Clergyman's Widow. So the original book is called The Clergyman's Widow. It is, I'm trying to remember, it's like a really prim and proper Victorian novel about a clergyman's widow. Now, if you notice, and let me zoom in here, at first glance, maybe it just looks like a regular book, but you'll note that there is black lace peeking out all along along the edge of this book. When you open up the cover, this is what you actually get. So what the artist has done is torn out all the pages, rolled them into scrolls, tied with presumably racy black lace, and then with the words that are still showing, has done blackout poetry to create a very not clergyman widow's poem. And so I think the next close-up is a close-up, yeah. But this became easier as there were no clothes, come a peep at him. How many kisses were given unconsciously grasping his hand, delicious tears, playful roguery that dimpled round her mouth. To its first impressions of pleasure, it gives an involuntary sigh. Was far too full for even a single word. Oh, her heart was far too full for even a single word of gratitude to find utterance. And so this, hang on, back. So the contrast between this sort of, and some of it is our own baggage, our own biases about what old books are versus, you know, the pulp romance being the racy book. All that symbolic weight that may or may not be justified gets attached to this book, hinted at lace, you pull it open and it's something completely different. And this is, I find this kind of thing fascinating because it also is giving new life to a book that otherwise may have been weeded out of the library, just ended up in landfill. So one of my justifications around the stuff that I do is it's helping me give books new life as opposed to destroying a book. And so I think in one of the conversations with, I think, Michaela and Aaron yesterday, we were talking about, it's like Pokemon. We're just evolving the book to its next form of existence. And I personally, I haven't read what is it called again? The Clergyman's Widow. I suspect I've enjoyed this way more than I would have enjoyed the original book. So now let me see. I don't think I'm gonna skip these next two because I'll go back to it. Okay, so then it was my turn. So my history with books is like from kindergarten. I have been a reader all my life. I love books. I've done a Bachelor of Arts and a Master of Arts in English. All of this stuff was so foreign to me. When I first went to the Bruce Peale Special Collections and saw these things, I was horrified. Like I was just traumatized seeing what had been done to these books. And back then, the notion that librarians have to naturally weed collections was just not something that happened. Like in my head, it was just, you don't do that to books. And in my family, I grew up like I was a lucky kid growing up, but not a lot of extra money. And so it was all about the library and being able to buy a book of my own, like, and have it. It's like you treated that like gold. So all this stuff was like just a trauma to me. Okay, do I have, hang on, let me just see what the next slide was. Oh yeah, okay. So we'll leave this background. It is show and tell time. So the descent into darkness for me with altered books, I actually get to blame on the Edmonton Public Library. So I ended up volunteering with the Edmonton Public Library when they started this campaign about 5 years ago called the City of Learners. And they started a campaign called 3 Skills YEG. So the idea was over the summer to have people learn 3 new skills. And to launch this, I got the lovely title of Learning Champion with the Public Library to promote this campaign. And the launch event was at the downtown library. So, you know, my grand temple, the ultimate place of books. And I went there, and one of the workshops, this is the first time I heard of blackout poetry. So I'm in the downtown branch of my home library that I grew up in. And I said, what is this? And said, oh, this is blackout poetry. What you do is you take one of these books, rip a page out of it, and then mark it up with a Sharpie. And I'm like, I'm looking around going, is this loud? I'm in the library. You're telling me to rip pages out of a book. And so it has since been framed, but I kept my blackout poetry, my first experiment, and it's part of why I have the content warning on the session. I genuinely had an anxiety attack and took a couple days to process, like stiff shoulders, because I whipped a page out of a book in the library. And so I don't remember what book this is from, but the poem that resulted was, words turn clear, burn like fire, fury, flame, fountain of the mind. No, 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 no. Abandoned winds and spell of smoke, whispered in the light, theory, philosophy, poetry, words. And I am really proud of this poem, written sort of as like out of somebody else's words. And that poor book is gone, and it was part of the weeding list from the library. So that was step 1. Step 2 was Audrey's bookstore. So I don't know if many of you have seen online when people have taken books and folded the pages to turn it into a thing on the side. So again, this book is sculpture. And I thought, wow, this is fascinating. This is great. I'd love to do that one of these days. Oh, hang on. I'm just going to give myself full screen so I can do the show and tell. So Audrey's books brought in a line of books where the book has been printed with gray bars on the page, where you fold the page down to that line in order to generate the artwork. So this is Sense and Sensibility. And I don't know if people want to throw in the chat, like, what's the 1-word theme of Sense and Sensibility? Or yell it out, I don't know, whatever works. So what it is the word love. And so if you go to any of these pages, the entire book is printed with these gray bars. And so on every page, you just fold the page down to the edge of that bar on every single page. It has some sort of thinner line marked, and you just fold the page to that bar. And that is the result of that work. So now so first it was the public library telling me to tear pages out of the book. Next, it's my favorite bookstore, and I'll just throw in a plug for Audrey's, Edmonton's longest lasting independent bookstore, selling me a book that's telling me fold all the pages down. So some of you know my daughter. I brought it home. Sydney and I lay down on the floor, one at the front and one at the back. Each had a fold to make. And she was like, are we allowed to do this? I was like, yes, yes, we are. We're going to do this thing. And so this was item 2. Put that back there. Item 3. So one of my favorite, so if you want a whole other rant, ask me about Griffin and Sabine by Nick Bantock. So if you're not familiar with this book, again, another of my favorite books, it's what I ended up writing my master's project about, was a close reading of Griffin and Sabine. It is a book told in postcards. So if you're familiar with novel history, the original novel was what they call an epistolary story, a story told in letters. And so the fiction was that you were reading letters written back and forth, and that's how the novel was written. So Nick Bantock, a British expat living in BC, took it one level further, where this is the postcard, you flip it over, and there's the back of the postcard with the writing. And it's this mysterious card that this woman named Sabine has written to Griffin. Griffin sends the postcard back. And so you read that epistolary novel on the actual postcards. And further in the book, you actually have full envelopes where you pull out the letters and you read this thing. That's how you read the whole story. And this has fascinated me forever. So I got a translation of it into, what is this? Is this Hebrew? I don't even know. So I've got this in Hebrew, being retold in Hebrew. What's really fascinating is I have the audiobook of it on cassette. And for those of you who are Star Trek fans, it's Counselor Troy plus the other dude that has the hot, steamy sex scene in Next Generation with her in that one episode, reading the cards back and forth. And there is a interactive CD version of it, or DVD, whatever you call it. And so this is what I'm already starting from, is there's a book that's already undoing all the conventions of a book. One of the later books has the premise that a new character has found the box with all of these postcards in it. So naturally I went, what would that be like if I actually just didn't find these in a book, but found them cut out as individual postcards in a box somewhere? So naturally, having done all this other stuff and ripped up books and folded up books, it's like, next step is cut one apart. So Griffin and Sabine is such a popular book. You can go to WeBookIn or Used Bookstore and generally find a copy for like $5. So it's like, all right, $5 an X-Acto knife, let's see what happens. So I cut the book apart into a pile of postcards. That in itself was fascinating. What ended up happening was I got in my head the next step. So what do I do with these postcards? So in the story, Griffin is the logical, grounded, sane person. And Sabine is the extravagant, living on a Pacific Island artist person. So in my head, I was like grounded and up in the air. So what I did, now, which one did I find? I was in a random discount store and I found a wire mobile for hanging photos with the little clips on it. So what I did was I took the Sabine postcards and clipped it to this mobile. And so right now it's hanging off my lamp, but it hangs in my office off the ceiling over there. So I've got Sabine's artwork and writing floating around in the sky, which of course got me to the other thing, which is the desktop clip stand. And so all of Griffin's letters and postcards sit down on the floor on my desk. And so again, going back to my talk yesterday about every reading of a book, every version of a book being a different performance, this is me going into the land of I'm totally remixing things from anything the author would have originally expected. And as horrified as I am by a lot of remixes in music in real life, some of them actually turn out really well. And so this is sort of the next step. So this was the first time I actually cut apart a book. So where is the next stuff? Okay, so I'm going to go slightly quickly through the next few show and tell items, partly because there's a link to a website that Stacy Conla and I started this year, and I've actually described in more detail what I've done with these two books. But the story is, I saw a design. For anyone who's not familiar with not Brave New World, Fahrenheit 451, Ray Bradbury's science fiction novel, the primary theme is about the burning of books, that the government does not want people to read. And so book burning is like state sanctioned activity. You cannot have books. We will find them and we will burn them along with your house. So there's also a very famous Ray Bradbury quote that goes something along the lines of, you don't need to actually burn books to damage society. You just have to get people to stop reading them. And this one artist I saw online ended up doing a binding of Fahrenheit 451 where the hardcover had a match embedded in it and the entire spine was scratch paper to ignite the match, which I thought was fascinating. And then my son tells me, hey, have you seen this copy of 451? I said, yeah, the one with the match? He goes, no, not that one. There's a company in Europe. What they've done is they've published a copy of Fahrenheit 451 where every page is then covered in heat-sensitive black ink. So the only way to read the book is to hold a flame up to the page to fade the black ink to reveal the words. And so there's a video out there of someone holding a lighter up to the pages of the book, and it's that color changing thing where it just sort of fades away and then you can see it. And this is, again, what was in my head as I was wandering down White Ave in Edmonton, wandered into chapters where they had this giant rack of the 60th anniversary edition of Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451. No one was going to miss a copy. There was like 100 right there on that shelf. And nobody, but the whole thing is like, how many people buy it and never read it just because they should have one? So I grabbed a copy of the book, kept wandering around the street, ended up in a store going, I need to find a fancy lighter or something like that. And they don't exist anymore, but it was this real sort of, there was a store that sold axes, shaving gear, mustache wax, and like it was one of those stores. And I went and said, hey, have you got a cool lighter? He goes, I don't have a lighter, but I've got a camp fire starter. And this is one of those mysteries of the universe. I went to pull it off the shelf to take a look at it, dropped it, it broke open. So I went, I guess I'm buying this. So Fahrenheit 451. I've got a fire starter. You're sort of going to get the spoiler. What I'm going to show you is the end product. If you go to the website, I've got photos of the whole process of how I went through this. But so this is Fahrenheit 451, my version, with the campfire starter. So it's the so it's one of these striker stones where you take this thing to shave off some starter, spark it here, and off it goes. And so my Fahrenheit 451 now has a lovely, oops, upside down, has a lovely space to hold it. And I cut all the way through the book and just left the history, context, and criticism of the book, but I won't actually let you read it. And this was sort of an accident. I was left with the pile of cutouts, happened to just, because I'm that way, had put them down in the right order. So I just hole punched them and strung them on there. So now you've got fire starter, you've got kindling, and you've got the book. And so this is my edition of Fahrenheit 451, playing on the theme of book burning, where here's the book, here's everything you need to set it on fire, but it doesn't matter because you can't read it anyways. And so as a book lover, as a reader, as someone who like, just, to me, it's just fascinating to experiment with, well, what does it actually mean for a book to be a book, for everyone to know Fahrenheit 451, but how many people actually read it, all that kind of stuff. And so there's this book, which got me going into a whole dystopic fiction classics thing, because I then stumbled across 1984. Just happened to be in the same red, black, and white theme. Thought that was great. And so just in my head, I threw on Facebook, I said, hey, does anyone have like a miniature spy cam or one of those things? Because like the theme is the surveillance society. That's even the image on the cover. So this one, there isn't as much information. I forgot to take pictures of the process because I just sort of got in my head, okay, a friend of mine said, yeah, I think I've got something. I'll just mail it to you. It's the video camera off a drone that he had that he doesn't use anymore. So if you go real close, what I've done is I just cut a hole through the whole thing. And there's a spy camera wireless thing embedded in the book. And I haven't got it, so there's, in theory, this camera still works. And so there is a receiver I have down on my floor. I'd have to get a battery to recharge this thing and a bunch of techie stuff that I haven't bothered to do. But so my vision is that this goes on display someday. And as you go up and look at the book, you suddenly notice out of the corner of your eye, you up on a video screen further down. So that's my 1984. The latest one was Brave New World. So I went looking for a copy of Brave New World, found a red, white, and black version, which was really great. Now, Brave New World, the theme of Brave New World, has many, many themes. I love that book way better than Fahrenheit 451 or 1984. And to me, it's a little, one of the things that I love about it is it's a little more insidious. The messaging in it, it's a little more sneaky. And so the book doesn't have any indication that there's anything done with it. But one of the themes in the book is that human beings cannot be trusted to procreate or raise their own children. So, sorry, spoiler alert. What happens is the government decants children along, like their test tube babies, along a conveyor belt in a factory. And part of what they do is they physically modify the kids as they go down so that in some cases, for example, they are deprived of oxygen to reduce their intellectual capability so that they grow up to become people who just sweep the streets. So lots of elitism, lot of there's all kinds of issues. So it's test tube babies, and part of the way they keep society stable is you just make sure everyone has lots of drugs so that everyone's just happy where they are. So what I ended up doing, and again, I'll just show you the end product. So what I ended up getting was, was empty pill capsules, which I filled with red crystal sprinkles to make little pills, and a test tube. And so when you open this book, you get the title page, Brave New World, and then the rest of the book is, and so you can actually see it. So it's cut through the entire book, so that the entire Brave New World is just summed up for you as a pill-filled test tube. Oh, and extra bits. The other thing that ended up on my desk were all the little shavings as I was cutting the pages out, which reminded me of DNA strands when you do DNA testing. So I had another test tube, so I filled those. I have no idea what I'm going to do with this. But so there's these two things. For the Fahrenheit 451, these are also all the hole punched bits out of the paper. So the entire book is there. I have not taken away anything of the book, like some of those other ones where you can't even read them. All the words, all the letters are there for you if you want them. Less so for Brave New World. I don't know what to do with these either, but this is the cutout bits of the middle of Brave New World. And so those are all the, so that's my, that's the fun that I've had in experimenting with these books. Okay, 243. Okay, are we gonna do this, Michaela? All right. So in discussion last night about this presentation, it was pointed out to me that what people actually wanted to see was actually the book being destroyed. When I did this presentation live 2 years ago at When Words Collide, that copy of 1984 I had with me, I actually brought Sharpies and offered this book to the crowd, and a number of people tore pages out of it and did their own blackout poetry there. Since no one's been warned about this, I don't want anyone to just have to randomly destroy a book in their house. So we'll do it vicariously through me. Let's see if this works here. Okay, there we go. Is that working? There we go. Okay, so what I have as the next project slated, so I've always loved Frankenstein as a book, arguably the earliest English language science fiction book ever written. And so I started picking up random copies of Frankenstein. So again, from my discussion, my presentation yesterday, I tend to, oh, now you're going to see me talk with my hands. What I do is I end up buying multiple copies of the same book, because to me, every single copy of a book is a slightly different reading experience. So naturally, I started picking up different copies of this book, Frankenstein. So there's this one. And because Frankenstein is out of print, lots of people publish these editions in different versions. I've got this one is, I haven't read it yet, but it's annotated for scientists, engineers, and creators of all kinds. So this one actually has footnotes about various things in the book. And I've got this lovely 200th anniversary edition with like these gorgeous illustrations and bits and pieces. So Frankenstein is about a guy who scavenges body parts to build a new complete person. So what I figured I was thinking of doing was going to Frankenstein a Frankenstein by taking a bunch of pieces of different Frankensteins and putting it into one edition of Frankenstein. Hadn't planned on doing this until yesterday, but here we go. Like if people want to go off mute and give suggestions, I really have not. A lot of times when I do these projects, it's exactly like this. Things randomly happen and it's just like, oh, that's an interesting next step. Let's cut that hole out of it. So I don't know what people think. Like when you think of Frankensteining a Frankenstein, it's like, well, there could be an arm from one place, a leg from another place. We could cut these things into we could cut all 4 of these into separate chapters, stitch them together randomly, and we'll have 4 Frankensteins of different kinds of Frankenstein. Or I start Frankensteining by taking one thing out of each one and then keep scavenging for used copies of Frankenstein. In fact, now I got in my head that next year, if we are live, what we do is we get everyone, all of you, or in my description for the project to go, and everyone, please find a beat up, old, unreadable copy of Frankenstein, and we'll just keep adding on to the Frankenstein next year live. So when I look at these things, so I've got 3 soft cover and a hardcover. To me, since this is the hardcover and it's the 200th anniversary, and it's already kind of this interesting collage of things, that to me, this would be my starting point, would be that I would keep the cover on the outside. And I do, from the other projects I've done, quite enjoy that element of surprise. So the Fahrenheit 451 is kind of in your face, that works. But I love the 1984 sneak up on you that there's a video camera in there. And the Brave New World being, it looks fine. So now, having said that, I think it's pretty obvious as soon as you saw Frankenstein's monster that he's not a single intact book. So there, right away, there's my thinking, on that point. Oh, okay. It's 2:48.
I was just going to say, I don't have to host a session after this. So if anyone wants to stay on until 3, we can.
Do we want to work on a project for an hour? So, but this is the kind. So this is what this is kind of the thinking that goes through my head as I'm playing with this. And again, this goes back to altered books being about the book and deriving a lot of its meaning from that original book. If it wasn't for the fact that it was Frankenstein and I just cut a bunch of books and stitched them together, it would just be a terrible way to be treating a book. But because Frankenstein is on the theme of finding your humanity, even though you are piecemealed together, or finding your wholeness out of kludging together things. I mean, in some ways, I feel like I shouldn't use these books that I bought sort of new, and instead I should go find WeBook In or used bookstore Frankensteins, or actually maybe that'll be my take 2, is I'll just talk to all the used bookstores in town and go, hey, if you ever get someone bringing in a Frankenstein that is too beat up for you to sell, keep that one for me, because I want the ones where I go, oh, the only part of this Frankenstein I can use is chapter 7, so we'll just rip that part out. So when I look at this, it's like part of me wants to use this book and then just make a mess of the inside, but part of me goes, oh, okay, at some point I should probably cut holes in this thing, or literally rip this cover off and just stitch it onto whatever I make somewhere else. I don't know. Ooh, okay, you could Mod Podge or attach piece to fabric. Oh yeah. So that's part of it. It's like, and this is where, you know, for example, I go, okay, what are all the different traditions of bookbinding? There are stitch books. Oh, I should share one thing before time is officially done. So this was actually a recommendation from part of the audience at the session 2 years ago. It's called Art Made from Books. And someone suggested it at that session. And of course, by the time I got back to my hotel room at When Words Collide, I'd ordered it online. And so this one's interesting because they've actually bound it. Well, let's see. I don't think you can see, but it's an exposed binding with the stitching showing. Again, another instance of this will be much easier when we're live. So there's just all these sort of concepts wrapped around what would be the book version of Frankensteining together a complete whole. And so what I'm going to suggest, Michaela, is maybe I will formally call this session to an end.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm just going to do the thank yous to everyone for coming. When 2 o'clock first rolled around, it was Michaela and me. And I was like, yeah, I would do this for one person. This is great. So, but thank you for coming along. I love talking about this stuff, obviously. Yeah, and so hopefully we will get to pick this up live next year. And yeah, if you'd like to stick around, please do.
Absolutely. And just on behalf of all of the attendees and the volunteers, Winston, thank you for taking your time today to share your expertise with us. And again, thank you to everyone who showed up. This has been a really delightful, stirring presentation that is very visceral, I'm sure, for any book lover. So like I said, I do not have to host after this. So we do have the option of hanging around and building a Frankenstein, but that is completely up to the audience at this point. But I will stop sharing or stop recording at this time.
Thank you, everyone.